All right, so up next, we had this probably happened earlier on in the night, but the recap that I'm reading only has it listed here, so screw it. Fandango runs into Summer Rae and Layla, and he says something about having how he wants both of them. Summer calls him a flamingo, and they make fun of his dance moves, and then they walk away. But speaking of Bo, he shows up, tells Fandango, if you love something, you have to let it go. And if it doesn't come back, then it was never yours to begin with. But I'm sure you can get some ladies. With your awesome dance moves and your fancy pants, all you gotta do is believe.
You know what's funny to me, Ashton, is that the best part about this wasn't even Bo speaking. It was Fandango's facial expressions throughout because he actually looked like he was seriously considering Bo leaving to me.
I
Like he,
know he did. He's totally gonna be a believer next week.
yeah, it didn't even seem like he was thinking, well, you know what, this guy's nuts. Like looking at him like he had three heads. He had that thoughtful look on his face that said, you know what, maybe he's
He's
onto
right.
something. I've got some thinking to do. Let
Yeah.
me dance to my thinking corner.
I need to
And
find myself a real journalism to record my thoughts.
exactly, yeah, exactly. So it would be interesting if maybe they played something like that up, where Bo would get legitimate Bo levers. I don't want us to run with that idea by any means, but the idea that Fandango seemed like he was
He and his
seriously
brother
considering.
could both be cult leaders, John.
I know, right? Oh, and then it would be the greatest faction war in history.
The Believers versus the Wyatt family.
Be like, you thought the Shield was bringing the pain? Looks like you didn't believe. And then they just go at it. It'd be awesome. Better than the invasion angle. But, yeah,
Probably would be,
I'll be interested.
sadly enough.
I don't think anything will come from this. I just wanted to point out how I thought it was interesting how Fandango seemed legitimately thoughtful about Bo's advice. So,
It was hilarious. I
we'll
love
see.
Fandango. I love Bo. Honestly, this might have been the most entertaining segment of the night.
I enjoyed it. I think Bo, I really haven't gotten tired of him yet. It kind of amazes me how he hasn't seemed to click with certain people yet. I guess to a degree I can understand why. I think when Bo gets in his first really legitimate feud, because honestly, I can't in good conscience count El Torito in that kind of group. But I think when Bo gets in his first really serious feud, I think that's when people will either really take interest in him or decide that they'll never take interest in him. So I am very eager to get to that point.
Absolutely. Up next we had. Oh, you know what? This might have actually been chronologically correct because up next we had AJ and Paige versus Summer and Layla.
Yes, and you know what, dude? This is the first point, and maybe there were other times and I just didn't hear you, but this was the first point where I heard you get annoyed with this show because, as you mentioned, they showed the video package, and I heard you say, are you kidding me? Like, this is the only progression they've had in this feud. Um, that said, this tag match wasn't bad. Honestly, I thought it was kind of awkward in the sense that this was Summer Rae and Layla had just become apparently besties or dance partners or whatever, and already they're being put in a tag team match, and already they're slated to lose because look at who the opposition is. It would have been nice to actually build these guys up as somewhat legitimate, but I knew we weren't going to get that when you look at who the opposition is. Paige controls most of the matchup. Looks like she's closing in on a victory. AJ steals the tag from her, however. Instantly locks in the Black Widow on Summer Rae. Summer Rae taps out. AJ gets the submission victory for her team, and Paige at first doesn't look too ecstatic about that.
Would you be?
I'd be ecstatic about winning, but yeah, when I did all the work and then somebody else comes in, I mean, I've had school projects like that, so yeah, I can see where Paige is coming from.
But guess what, John? She was
What?
just feigning the anger. She hugged AJ.
I know, right? Besties forever. Now let's go to the back and finish our Friends Forever bracelets. So excited.
Oh
But
my god, this angle.
I know, I'm a dude,
It's
and
like they're trying to turn the writing team into the heels because that's what I feel like is the real heels in this angle. Certainly isn't AJ or Paige right now.
And you know what, Ashton? I will say this. If Paige doesn't turn on AJ at Battleground, I will put on a robe and I will join your choir of criticism against this. Because that's the only thing I'm really holding out hope for. And that's why I'm really enjoying this and being okay with this, is because I really do feel like that's going to be the payoff. But if it doesn't come, and I guess if it would come on Monday, maybe I'd be able to excuse it. But I'd be like, man, I feel like it would really have more of a punch in the post-match at Battleground. Because, a Divas match actually having a worthwhile ending like that, what a shock. So that's how I hope it goes down. we'll wait and see. I hope these two women get the chance to put on a clinic. If not then most certainly at SummerSlam. So.
Most certainly.
Definitely.
Okay. We got a backstage segment. Kane and Seth Rollins. Kane telling Rollins that he has plans for Ambrose. Seth asking for a favor that Kane leaves a little bit of life left in Ambrose just so that he can finish the job at Battleground. Kane tells him not to get any ideas about cashing in the Money in the Bank contract. So, we had Kane versus Ambrose next.
Not really much for me to say about this main event. It was good. Ambrose is always good, and I always enjoy Kane. But Ambrose was, once again, selling that shoulder. It's like Ashton told you guys.
I'm telling you, man, 3 years.
3 years. He's going to get everything he can out of that baby, and I can't really say that I blame him. I mean, hell, it works as long as.
And you know what, dude? The real irony here is I was just complaining earlier about JBL's commentary. He freaking had an amazing line tonight. He's tougher than his body.
Yeah.
No. He said he's too tough for his body.
I love, and it's funny that you quote that line because it immediately makes me think, did you read, because I personally didn't, I just saw snippets of it, but did you read the article that WWE.com had about Ambrose and his hardcore experience?
No.
And I think they're calling him like the new most dangerous man in WWE or something like that, where he's just like so hardcore and so psychotic, he doesn't really care what he has to put his body through to get the job done, and he says he doesn't fear anybody. There's nobody or anything that he really fears. All he cares about is destruction, just really getting the job done that he wants to get done. I think it's great that they gave him a piece like that. I think it's great that there's commentary like this for him because that's the character. A guy who, because he's so mentally gone, is too tough even for his own body because he will endure things long before it can if it means destroying his opposition, in this case, the Authority, and specifically Seth Rollins.
I was going to say more Seth Rollins. He doesn't really care too much about the Authority. It just so happens that Rollins is a part of it, and that's like hatred by association.
Exactly. So, again, nice back and forth between these two. I love the opening minutes of this match, personally, where Ambrose tries to go for the suicide dive early, but Kane catches a right hand right to the shoulder of Ambrose. I thought that was really cool. And, just a nice back and forth. And later in the match, Ambrose tries it again, and he does hit the suicide dive. And when it seems like Ambrose may finally get a victory for once, we get interference yet again, don't we, Ashton?
Oh, you mean a WWE's television show ended in a match that ended in a disqualification, John?
I know, right? Must be a day that ends in Y.
I am so shocked. Must be a day that ends in day.
Oh, wow, you went all the way with that one. Because it ends in DQ. Seth Rollins comes from behind, hits Dean Ambrose in the back with the Money in the Bank briefcase, puts the boots to him, because of course Kane, being in a championship match on Sunday, doesn't really care about momentum, at all, so it's cool that you cost me that match. Totally fine. So, they get in, they do business, Kane sets up, he still steps in the ring, Ambrose is able to get a flurry of punches on Rollins, but if you think that was gonna last, oh, do I have some sad news for you.
You fool.
Kane lays Ambrose out, and then I will admit this part was legitimately sick, and why I really am enjoying Seth Rollins' heel, because he's not afraid to get as sadistic. I actually said statistic. Wow. Sadistic.
You're so statistic, John. Seriously, crunch less numbers.
You know what? I'm thinking about the lies of statistics that WWE espouses that you called out tonight when they said that John Cena has the most Twitter followers of any athlete, and you proved that wrong.
LeBron James has like twice as many.
So suck on that, WWE. I was polluted by your lies, and you affected me from doing my job. So anyway, Jeez. Seth Rollins isn't afraid to get as sadistic as Dean Ambrose. And you know what, Ashton? It really makes me wish, even though they don't need it, and that's why I think they're going to have a great match at Battleground, that they'd have maybe like a no-holds-barred or a hardcore match or something like that at SummerSlam because of how these guys have tried to punish each other. I think it would be great, and I feel like because Dean Ambrose has that reputation, if Seth was able to come out on top, that would do for him to a degree what I think Orton beating Cactus Jack in 2004 did for him. Not to the same degree, but just knowing that he beat a guy in his backyard like that, I think would be awesome for Rollins.
Yeah, definitely. So, you know what, dude? I don't really have anything to add. If you want to get into our next segment, you can.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, man. That's fine. Yeah, we'll get right into it because I have nothing else to say about the SmackDown either. It's time to get into high spots and low shots. And my low shot is Fandango.
Ah,
Um, Loses his match, tried to get his girls back, but ended up being mocked. And then he gets imparted with some advice from Bo Dallas, which he does take thoughtfully. But who knows if Bo leaving will get him on the right track for now.
John, how dare you?
Well, I believe it can. I believe it can, but he's got to willfully embrace it. He's got to truly believe it. But for now, he's just destitute in the spot known as my low shot. So,
Nice. Very, very articulate wording as well.
thank you. Thank
I'm
you.
going to I'm going to keep it simple. My low shot's Kofi Kingston because nobody cares about him and because nobody cares about his opponent and he cared to another guy who people care even less about than him.
Perfectly said. I'm not even really going to add to that.
It was I felt like such a jerk because while we were watching this, these guys got in the ring. Really, it was just Kofi that was in the ring. And then when I realized that he was going against Del Rio, I said to myself, yeah, if I had control of WWE, I would release both of them.
I would too. I feel like Del Rio, again, there's really nothing left for him to give because he can't even fill that Jericho role of putting the up and coming talent over because I think to really do that and to do that effectively, you have to have people care about you to some degree.
Yep.
And we've already established that nobody does at Del Rio. So he
Yep.
can't even serve that function. Kingston, aside from his crazy battle royal spots that here's a thought Sami Zayn could probably do if you wanted to call him up.
Mm-hmm.
There's really, or Adrian Neville, but he's NXT champion, so I didn't include him.
Adrian Neville would make such a good Kofi Kingston replacement.
Dude, and you know what a big fan I am of his. I think Adrian Neville could make both John Morrison and Kofi Kingston saves in Battle Royals look like jokes. Because the stuff he does just blows my freaking mind. And
he would be the first man ever to jump from the ring to the announce table and back without his feet touching the floor.
And then he'd have this smirk like, yeah, that happened.
Yep.
So, yeah, I'd love to see him in a Battle Royal type environment, either him again or Zayn. I feel like Kingston really has no function to serve as well. So that's just what it is for me. As far as my high spot, I have to say I'm going to say my high spot is Seth Rollins. He seems to be in complete control right now. He's in with the Authority. The Authority beefs him up with protection. We don't know how long that protection's going to last, but it lasted tonight. And he was able to curb stomp Dean Ambrose into the steel steps, continuing his assault on Dean from Monday. Was able to get by with the quote-unquote weak knee, so he knew nobody would touch him. Seth is playing a brilliant game of chess right now, and he's got all the pieces in place. And that's why he's Mr. Money in the Bank. So kudos to the architect.
And nobody is surprised by this.
Absolutely not.
Okay. My high spot, just because I feel like I don't get the opportunity to say this enough, is Dolph Ziggler. Because not only did he pick up the win for his team, he actually pinned, I believe, was it? Yeah, he actually pinned The Miz. And when Sheamus was in the ring, there were constant "we want Ziggler" chants. So Ziggler had a pretty darn good night tonight. And they weren't canned in because that's not something that WWE wants people to chant. They don't want people to like Ziggler. They want people to like Sheamus.
It really disappoints me that Ziggler gets the reactions he does, and he's still in this spot on the card. Again, I went back and I watched that match from Payback 2013 today. People were so behind Ziggler, it was ridiculous. Now, granted, I have to concede it was a Chicago crowd, but Ziggler seems to get these kinds of reactions consistently.
Ziggler isn't from Chicago. What does that matter?
Well, I know, but Chicago's really a wrestling town, so I think they'd have more appreciation for Ziggler as, say, other typical babyfaces that WWE would want to get those kinds of reactions. But what I'm saying is Ziggler gets those reactions consistently, so it has nothing to do with geographical location of a certain event. It's just that Ziggler's that damn good. So I just wish he was in a better spot. Clearly, with the belts being consolidated, I don't think he'll ever be in the main event again. But I would like to see him at least get the United States Championship again down the line, if that would ever be a possibility. But it's out of our hands. I'm just glad you gave him your high spot.